Alright, hey guys, what's up? This is Ahmed Al Halleg, and these are the videos that I have promised you at the end of this session that we have took on the past Tuesday, I guess. Yeah, the past Tuesday. It was the AppInventor session. Just let me remind you of what we were supposed to do together. I was supposed to do these three programs with you, but because of some technical difficulties at that day, the Wi-Fi was down and I used my hotspot to do it, and things were kind of out of our hands at that day. We weren't that lucky. So my hotspot actually was really reliable at the first application, so we almost finished it without, we couldn't really demonstrate the remember me functionality. I just wanted to skip it to because I thought that I was running out of time and I needed to introduce you to the other two applications that we have, but things got a little bit south and we couldn't have reliable Wi-Fi at the time. My hotspot actually got broken at some point, and when I wanted to introduce you the simple 2D game, I like it was really it was a very unlucky day because I like almost every day I have my USB cable with me, and at that day I had it too, but for some reason it got corrupted. It just got corrupted and it didn't work. That's why I was asking for anyone who has an extra USB-C type. But anyway, I thought that I should call it a day. I thought that if I showed you only one application, then this is really fine, and we did this login and sign up system together. For the other two applications, I told you that I'm going to do videos for each one of them, and actually I ended up doing like 5 videos. One video for this login sign up app, and one video for the location tracking in Google Maps API or app, and the 2D game also had a video. I made videos for the one-time login app and the multiple users logins. Okay, so let's get started and see this AppInventor website. Alright, so basically if you typed appinventor.mit in Google, I believe this is the first link that you will find, and this is their homepage. If you scroll down, you will go to this tutorial segment. Basically it's a step-by-step guide. It's just a warning, this is pretty long. It's really long tutorials, but if you finish them, you will be familiar with every component in this AppInventor layout. It's a good thing, and maybe it's kind of extra. Maybe you don't need to know everything, but finishing the tutorials isn't really bad. Yeah, it's gonna help you. My recommendation, whether you're gonna take these tutorials or not, to finish the videos that I will make for these three applications. Even if your project idea was maybe carpooling, and you're gonna ask yourself, why do I need to finish this simple 2D game? Why do I need to make it? Well, and the same question goes for someone who has a learning system, an interactive learning system. Like he would ask himself, why would I make a Google Maps or location tracking application? Well, the idea behind doing all of these projects is to get you familiar with algorithms and concepts and logic behind different kind of applications. It's gonna give you this sense of development, and it's really good to have this sense before embarking in doing your actual project idea. So I really recommend, this is my advice to you. You want to take it, it's really up to you. Do the whole three applications, do each one of them, and when you finish them, start doing your project idea. Okay, just to recap, the first one, the login or sign up application, we're gonna add the remember me functionality, and we will add something called a clock or a timer, and I'm going to show you how are we going to add something like this, and what benefits it's gonna give it to you. All right, the second one is the location or the Google Maps application. That's gonna be the second video, and the third is gonna be the simple 2D game, which is basically an interactive learning system. Right, these videos, I have already made a video for one-time login app and a video for multiple users logins, but I was really afraid that if I uploaded this, it's gonna confuse you. So just to let things be as simple as possible, I won't upload these videos. But if I get some demand from one of you, if I get a request from one of you on the mail or if you came to me to my office, maybe I'll upload these links. Okay, and it's completely optional. You don't need to have this one-time login functionality in your application. It's totally fine to have it like whenever you open the application, it's gonna ask you to log in. When you close the application and open it one more time, it's gonna ask you to log in. It's totally fine. No one will judge you. All right. If you want to make it one-time login, it's of course it's gonna be something really great to do, but it's an extra feature. So if you feel that it's difficult, just skip this. Okay, the multiple users login. I told you in the session that all of the logic that we will build behind this login system, it's gonna be revolving around having only one user at a time. Even if you deleted the actual the current data in the database, which stands for one user, and make a new account, like aka a new user, you will be only having one user. You will still be having one user in your database. And I told you this is totally fine. If you want to make multiple users, there's gonna be a video for it, and if I'm going to upload it if you ask for it. Okay, but if you feel that if you've seen this video uploaded, it's gonna be written behind like beside of it optional, you can really skip it. It's not really mandatory to have these two functionality running on your application. Okay, so let's get started. Whenever you create apps, it's gonna take you to your project list. If you have done any projects in the past, I believe you'll have this list like kind of having some entries here. But if you didn't, this list is gonna be empty. So we're gonna click on the start new project, and let's name it in all caps, login. Oh my god, system. I'm having a new keyboard, so it's really difficult for me. Alright, now let's explore the interface. I believe I've told you this stuff in this session, but I'm just going to reiterate. On the left, you're gonna find this palette. This palette is basically gonna have all the components that you can add to your smartphone, starting from the GUI. Like all of these are components of the GUI. Buttons and checkboxes, images, labels, list pickers and notifications, password text boxes and normal text boxes, sliders. Maybe you'll have something like to tune between 0 and 100, an audio or something, and you will have a switch, something to turn on and off whenever you like, whenever the user like. Here is the layout. How do you want to arrange or align these items? Do you want to align them side by side, or to align them like vertically, or maybe you would want to have it in a table, and like the one that I've showed you in the session. Maybe you would want to have something scrollable, like having a window like this, and inside of this window there's a scroll bar here. Okay, and this is the media, where maybe you want to make something related to, I don't know, to capture a QR code or something. So you want to use the mobile's camera, you want to add use the mobile sound, you want to add some speech recognizer or text to speech. There's the drawing and animation, and this is basically what we will be using in the, I believe, in the second or the third video, when we are going to do the 2D game. Alright, so this canvas is basically something like the screen that we have here, but with more powerful features. Like in this canvas you can add animated GIFs or images, videos, like so many stuff can be done in this canvas. But, and this is really weird, like in this canvas you can put inputs. You can't insert inputs in this canvas. I don't know why, but AppInventor's developers just decided that this is the way to go. Okay, so this is the sensors. We're gonna use this clock one just pretty soon, and location sensor is gonna be in this location tracking and Google Maps application, I believe in the second video, or maybe the third. This is the accelerometer sensor, which is responsible for the rotation in your mobile. When you rotate it to the left or the right, you find your screen got horizontally aligned. So this is the one responsible for rotation or balancing, and we will use this in our game. Okay, here in the storage you will find the databases, and basically, if you remember how I described the database is something behind the scenes, the back end, where it's just a storage, it's just a place to store your data in. And you have multiple types of databases, the TinyWeb and the TinyDB and the CloudDB. For simplicity, we're going to go with the TinyDB. If you click on the activity connectivity, you're going to find if you want to make something like having Bluetooth connectivity, here you go, you have the client and the server Bluetooth component, and this is the activity starter, and this is the one that we are going actually to use when we try to configure the Google Maps. You know, you want your mobile with a click of a button to open up another application or to use another feature in another application like Google Maps, for example. So you are basically willing to use the service of another application, which is in this case the Google Maps. Services are called APIs. If you want to use an application's service or API, like for example Google Maps service or Google Maps API, you will need this activity starter. Okay, the same thing goes if you want to log in with your Facebook credentials or Twitter credentials. You would want to use Twitter services or Twitter API or Facebook services or Facebook API. So in order to do this, you need the activity starter. All right, so let's get started. So continuing, you will have this components segment in front of your designer. All of this inside the designer. Designer is basically where we are going to design our layout or design our user interface or GUI. Okay, so any component we will add to the screen will be added here. Up until now we have this only the screen. This is the only thing that is getting displayed. So unfortunately this screen, the first screen, which is screen 1, you can't rename it. Alright, so why do we need to rename it? Because whenever we are going to the blocks, when we are going to add actually the logic behind everything, like whenever we click the button that we have designed here, how would this button function? The functionality of the button itself is going to be programmed in this blocks, alright, in this blocks section. So up until now we only have the screen component, okay, and we can do so many stuff. Like AppInventor is providing you with like built-in functions that you can use, right? And the same goes with every component. So this is your component and this is your properties. For the screen, I really don't recommend that you change anything. Like if you want to explore some features, yeah, right, yeah, go ahead and just explore some stuff. But you'll see here the app name, application name, and maybe things that you might get interested in, like the screen orientation. Maybe you're doing some game that requires your phone to be rotated to the left to be in a horizontal scale or something. So you will need it to be landscape. The default, I think, it's unspecified, which is gonna be, I mean, it's something like the portrait. Like you don't have it to be, you can have it to be on the horizontal alignment or the vertical alignment. Alright, so here we have the components. The components will actually include any component that you are going to drag and drop in this screen of yours. Right? This is the properties. Every component will have properties. Okay? For the screen, for example, there's really nothing going on here. Like I believe that the only thing that might interest you is the screen orientation. Maybe you want your screen to be a landscape, meaning that it's horizontally scaled. Maybe you're having a game that, like, this game needs you to rotate your phone to the left or to the right to play it in a horizontal mode. So this is the landscape. By default, I believe it's unspecified or portrait. So let's leave it as is. Maybe you will find at some point that you have so many components that you need with your hand, with your touch, that you need to scroll like up to go down. So if this was the case, if you have so many components, you might want your screen to be scrollable. That's, I believe everything that you want to know about the screen. The rest is up to you. You can explore these options, right? So let's start by doing our screen 1 is going to be our login page. Of course, we can rename the component, but for the screen 1, which is the very first initial component that you get whenever you start a project, you can't, like, unfortunately, you can't rename it. So let's just know that screen 1 is our login panel or login screen, okay? So we can add the label here, and we will like retype here and say username, and we will add here something like password, and maybe we will need a text box, an input field to enter the username, and a password text box to enter the password. But there's a problem here. If you notice that if you use this default layout that the screen provides you, everything will be aligned vertically, and I don't think that this is a great design at all. So if you want to enhance your design, you can go to the layouts. Basically, if you chose this horizontal arrangement, you will get the luxury of placing stuff beside each other in a horizontal arrangement. But if you want to place this text for label 2, which is going to be our password, underneath the text for label 1, it's not going to go well for you, because this is a horizontal arrangement, so it's going to grab everything and put it beside each of these components. Okay, so another solution is to add another horizontal arrangement here, and add this guy there, and add this guy here. Okay, this would do the trick. But if you didn't like this, you have this table arrangement, which I really recommend using. This table arrangement is basically, it's stable. It has by default columns, 2 columns like this, and it has 2 rows like this. Okay, so we will place this guy here and this guy beneath of it, and it's gonna work like magic. All right, we're gonna place this text field here and this password text box here. Okay, let's place it underneath of it, and I believe we're gonna delete this horizontal arrangement, and I'm gonna delete this guy. Okay, well, that's really cool. Now let's add in a horizontal arrangement, let's add a checkbox. In this checkbox, we're gonna name it, notice something, the checkbox itself has a name. This name of the component, like if you want to rename it from here, but I'm not going to rename this because we won't really care about the name of the component. I'm just going to name the text of this component. Like each of these has a text. Like for example, label 1 has a name, or label 2 has a name, but inside the properties you will find a text property for each of these components. And inside this text, if you wrote anything, it's going to be displayed instead of this default thing text for label 2. Okay, so the label 1 is going to be password. Okay, and label 2 is going to be username. Okay, now just for us not to get confused in the future, we will name these labels. Okay, it's really unnecessary. If you remember that label 2 is your username and label 1 is your password, then fine. Okay, that's it, you're good to go. But if you want to make sure that you remember what is this and what is that, all right, we can rename it. So let's rename label 1 password label, and let's name label 2 with username label. Okay, would this really matter with me? Would this really be important? Well, I'm going to tell you what exactly you should rename. You see these text boxes, this text box here or this password text box here, basically these are going to be variables. And what I mean by this is that the user will input an unknown data here. Like the username that the user will input in this field is unknown to me, so this is some unknown input data, and he's going to enter some unknown input data in the password. So I'm really curious about what the user will enter, because whatever the user will enter of text here, I'm going to take it and compare it to the values or the usernames that I have stored in the database. If I have a matching between the text that the user is entering here and whatever is stored in the user column in the database, then this means that this guy has already been registered before. So if he has already registered, I'm going to let him log in, and I'm going to take him to this home screen of his, or feed page, or his timeline, whatever you want to call it, right? So I'm really interested in the text box and in the password text box, okay? Because these guys, I'm going to use them in this blocks or in this area when we build our program or build our logic actually. So these are the most important one. If you click on this, you're gonna see multiple methods and multiple properties. I'm really curious about having this one, text box text one. If you have this with you, then this will basically return anything that the user enter in this field. Like if he entered Ahmed here, and if you have this block right there, then this block will return whatever is written there, which is in this case we're talking about is Ahmed. Okay, and in the same thing, this is returns whatever inside the box, and this is lets you set anything manually inside the box. So if you choose the property, see these properties, these the same properties as the properties we are finding in this right corner here. Right, so you want to check this text property, all right. So if you are saying set, then you are assigning a value to this text box inside text box one, right? So if I'm going to choose like some text in, right, something like hello, it's not gonna appear in the designer. You wouldn't see hello written here, but whenever you open your application, you would see that this word or this string being written to this text box in this area. Okay, so this is just to show you that every component has a way to fetch its own data written inside of it. If it's the case, if we are talking about a text box or a password text box, and we have this ability to set or assign data to an already existed text box or text field. Okay, so let's continue in the designer. Okay, so this is my layout. If you remember, I told you to start a previous version. All right. If you remember in this AppInventor session that we have last week, I told you if you want to place everything in the center, and we are going to do this right now, you can do something like, you see this checkbox, I removed the text from here. Let's make it remember me, and let's give it a font bold and maybe a font size of 17, for example. All right. So if you want to center this in the middle, and you happen to find your component inside a horizontal arrangement box, then I believe everything is going to be easy for you. Because if you click on the horizontal arrangement box, which is the parent here, you will see this align horizontally. Just click on center. It's going to center everything in the middle. But you need also another trick, which is the width. Fill the width pixels to be filling the parent, which is in this case the parent is going to be your screen, your width of your actual screen. So if you click fill parent, and if you have this align horizontal and center, you will see that every component inside this parent, which is in this case horizontal arrangement, is going to be in the middle. But things do not work this way when you have a table arrangement. It's going to work if you have horizontal or vertical arrangement, but table arrangement, you don't have any option or property called align horizontal. You don't have this. Okay, so what you're gonna do is the following. First of all, make the width of your table arrangement to fill the parent, which is your smartphone screen. Okay, next, make these columns instead of 2, 3. All right, so you will have, this is the first one, and this is the second column, and this is the third column. So bring this to the third and bring this to the second. Okay, this is almost looking like in the middle, but just to make sure, maybe you have a personal preference. You want this to go this padding here, you want it to be somehow less than how it's shown. So how are you going to do this? Just take a horizontal arrangement and place it in the first place here. Okay, now control the size of this horizontal arrangement. Like, first of all, you have the height. Get the height something like 28 pixels. And give the width, make it a square, 28 pixels too, and you will have this thing. Whatever you feel like doing, just go ahead and do it. Okay, so the width here, I'm going to stick with 28. If you want to have some space between the username and the password, just control the height. So give the height something like 40. If you feel that this is good enough, this padding or margin between these two components, then this is really good to go. Okay. Now we need to place the button, but if you place the button like this, it's going to be always aligned to the left of the screen. So we need a horizontal arrangement to place the button inside. So we can control the parent, which is the horizontal arrangement 3, and give this with a fill parent, and this align horizontal is going to be centered. And this button, we're going to give it some style, like text color is going to be white. This is the way I like it personally. And the color, all of these colors, by the way, are really ugly. So I don't know, if you like to use them, just go ahead and use them. We're going to use this custom color. Okay, so drag this and place it here at the top. Okay, and maybe I'm going to choose something bluish. Okay, done. Make the font bold and change the text to be login. Oh, I'm misspelling. Oh my god. Alright. And maybe we would like the width of the button to be a little bit like the padding from this place and this place to be greater. So you have the width component, right? So just make it like 100 pixels or something. If this is good, then you're good to go. If you increase the font size inside of the button, like for 17 or something, just like take care that the whole button size will increase. All right. Okay. So what if you want to see all of these beautiful things inside, or not inside, in the middle of your interface? Like, I want this username and password to start from here. I don't want it to be up to the top like this. So I can grab a vertical arrangement and give it some height, like 120 pixels. If you feel that this height is good for you, then you're good to go. Remember that this area, it wouldn't appear like a gray box like this. This will be appearing as a white place, a white area. So this is actually invisible, okay? Unless we put some elements inside, okay? So I believe we're good to go. Let's just go to the username and give it like 17, and this password, give it like 17 as well. Okay, so this is our first screen, or the login screen. Let's add another screen, which is the registration. So let's see how will things go. Basically, if the user have registered before, if the user has registered before, he will be immediately directed to the login screen because he has an account in the database. So why not just log in and take him to his timeline, right? If he didn't register before, then we will take him immediately to the register screen, and this is the one that we will build right now. This is the one I've demonstrated in this AppInventor session last week. So I'm going to use the same thing, but first of all I'm going to drag a layout, which is going to be a table, and this table is going to have like 2 columns because we're going to have user, text field for the user, confirm user, text field for confirm user, password, and like this. So we need only 2 columns, and basically I'm gonna need I believe 4 rows. Let's make this 3 columns. Why? Because we want to center stuff in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to fill this table width to be filling the parent, which is your smartphone's width. Okay, now let's drag and drop the first label in the second area. This is confirm user, password, confirm password. Here we have the text box. We need the password text box. Alright, cool. Now let's add the horizontal arrangement in the first place here and give it 28 pixel and a width of 28 pixel. Okay, and I don't want everything to start from up top like this, so I'm going to add a vertical arrangement or a horizontal one. It really won't make a difference. It's not like I'm going to insert any elements inside. I just want to control the height of this layout. So let's give the height something like 2120, like the same one that we used in the login page, just to look similar to each other. And finally we will need a button. So this is the horizontal and this is the button. Okay, so going to this horizontal arrangement that we have just dragged and dropped, I'm going to make the alignment in the center and fill the parent. Okay, so I'm going to style this button. The text color is going to be white and the background color is going to be custom. Let's choose something to be reddish. I believe this is cool. Okay, make this bold and just type here register. Okay, let's name the button register. Duplicate component name. Okay, I believe because we named the component screen, we named it register, so we can name this register. So let's call it just sign up. Okay, all right. So these labels, as I've told you, we don't really care about these labels. Why? Because these names are going to be fixed. Like the first one, it's going to be username. The second, confirm username, password, and confirm password. So all of these labels, it will not change. Nothing will change. So we don't really care about these labels. It's not like we are going to use anything regarding these labels in the blocks when you program stuff. When we program stuff, what we're really concerned about are the text box 1 and 2 and the password text 1 and 2, because these are the boxes that's going to hold values from the user, and we want to fetch these values that the user will enter in this interface. I hope this is clear. These are the things that we care about because the user will interact with them, but these are just fixed labels. That's it. So the first label is going to be username. The second one is going to be confirm username. Okay, and this is going to be password, and this guy is going to be confirm password. That's cool. All right, let's name our boxes. Let's rename them. So I'm going to rename the first box to be user. The second one, let's make it confirm user. This is going to be password, and this is going to be confirm password. Okay. There's something that I haven't talked about in this text boxes. You have something called the hint. The hint is basically when you have something like a placeholder here saying, for example, enter your username, and whenever you click on this box and try to enter something, this placeholder immediately disappears. So I'm not going to do it in these guys here because basically there are 4 of them. It's gonna take so much time. So I'm going to do it in the first screen, which is the login part. In the login panel, inside the hint in this text box one, I'm going to say enter your username, ... Okay, and in this password text box inside the hint, I'm going to say enter your password, ... Obviously, it's gonna be shown in this GUI, in this designer panel in front of you, but whenever you try to run your application from your smartphone or from the emulator, you will see this hint being shown to you. Okay, so let's go back to the blocks. We have added this just for doing. Okay, so basically we have finished the registration page and the login page. Okay, so now let's go to the home screen. Whenever we register, then we log in. After the login, you should be introduced to your home page or your feed or your timeline. So let's add another screen and call it like something like, I don't know, home, for example. Okay. In this home, I'm not going to do anything regarding styling because this is just an indicator that we have logged in correctly. So I'm just gonna have a label here, and in this text of the label, I'm going to say you are logged in. Okay, and I'm going to make it bold, and this is going to be 19. Okay, and we will eventually have a button to log out, so I'm going to say log out. Inside the text of it, I'm going to say also log out. Okay, and we will have a button to delete our account. I'm going to rename this as clear all, for example, clear all data regarding my account, and in the text field I'm going to say delete my account. All right, cool. Now I believe we are finished in the GUI of the three panels of the three screens. Let's go to the screen one, which is the login. Remember something: whenever the user enters something here and there, we will take the value that the user will input and we will compare it of whatever value we have in the database under the variable user, and whatever value that the user will enter in this field, in the password field, we're gonna take it and compare it to whatever value that has been stored inside the database under the variable or column called pass or passwords. If they two are matching and the user clicked login, we will gotta take him to the screen 3, which is the home. This means he's logged in. Alright, but by default, anyone who opens this application for the first time, he needs to see the registration page, because that's your first time in this application. So basically, to use this application, you need to register, you need to sign up. So this is the screen that will pop up to anyone who opens this application for the first time. Okay, so let's start doing this logic behind this registration page first, before the screen one, which is the login, and before the home page. Okay, so this is the registration panel. Let's click on blocks. First of all, if you remember our discussion about the technique that we are going to register the user or store his data in the database upon, we said that we want to match the values that the user will enter in the username with the confirmed username. If those two are matching or identical, and the value that he will enter in the password and the confirmed password, if those two are identical, we will then store his data in the database. So first of all, we will need the component from the storage that is called tinydb, and I told you we will use tinydb as a database for simplicity, and we will drag and drop it here. Okay, and then what if the user like entered something in the username field that is not matching the other value in the confirmed username, and vice versa in the password and confirmed password? We need to notify him and tell him, please take care that one of the fields are not matching, one of the credentials are not matching. So we want this notification component, and you will find this notification component in the notifier. So just drag this and drop it here, and we're good to go. Now let's see, when the user click on the sign up button, you see the method click here. You have so many things actually. You have long click, you have gut focus, you have touch down, like meaning that you will click on something and drag down like this. And I'm going to go for the basic one, which is the normal click button. When the user click on this sign up button, I'm going to check on something first. Okay, if first of all, before like making sure that these two are equal and making sure that these two are equal, we need to make sure that the user will not hit register button while having these fields empty, meaning that he might not enter anything at all from the start and just try to play around and click register. No one knows the behavior of the database at this point. So if you didn't take care about these small details, it may actually crash your application. So you don't want this to happen. So first of all, the first check we will provide, the first level of check, is if these values are not empty, then go ahead and check if these values are matching or not. Okay, so let's say if I'm gonna need an and here, if the text inside the user, I'm going to choose the text property, and the text inside the confirm user, the text inside the user, which is the user text box, was not empty. Okay, and if the text inside the confirm user text box was not empty, okay, And notice basically, if you looked at the logic, you will see the and the or logical operators that we have discussed in the second lab. And this is the equality check. Remember when I told you that you have a double equal sign? This is the equality check, which compares the thing on the left with the thing on the right, like this. This is the equality check. It's just written here as one equal sign, but because it's inside the logic, you know that this is a double equal sign. In the math, you will find a one equal sign, and this is basically the assignment, if you remember correctly. This is basically to place whatever on the right hand side with whatever variable on the left hand side. Okay, so this is the assignment, and this is the double equal signs, or the double equality check. Okay, so these gates or logical operators, we have discussed them in the second lab, but we didn't really talk about the NOT gate or the negation logical operator. The NOT gate is basically like this. If you have something that returns true, when you say not true, then the verses is going to be returned. Like not true is going to return false, and if we have not false, it's going to return true. So basically what I'm saying is, gonna put this in the if statement and say if the user have entered something in the user input box in the text field, and if he enters something in the confirm user input box in the text field, and I believe this is not enough, we need another AND gate for the password text field and the confirm password text field. Gonna get the text from here. Another one for the confirm password. Okay, and we're gonna need an AND to combine both conditions. Gonna be a pretty long statement, so I hope you can see this. So we're saying if the user have entered something in this user text field, and if he has entered something in the confirm user text field, and if he enters something in the password text field, and if he enters something in the confirm password text field, meaning that all of these fields are not empty, which means basically that he has entered something, then we are going to check. That's going to be the nested if, the second level of checking. We're going to check if the values that he entered in this guy and this guy here are matching, and the value that he entered in the text in the password and the confirm password are matching. Okay, so we're gonna do this inside this if, but let's add an else, just assuming that he didn't enter anything and he just left the fields empty and he was just playing around and clicked register. So if he left everything empty, which is the else, if this is not empty, all of these are not empty, then the else of it is gonna be, of course, one of them are empty, maybe all of them are empty. So if this is the case, we're going to use the notifier to say something like, we have so many messages as notifications that we can pop to the user. We have this log warning, show alert, choose dialog, and this will have options like 2 click buttons. We're going to use this in the game video. We have the message dialog and the password dialog. We're going to use the alert one. So we will have this message to him as the notice saying that one of the fields are empty. Please fill all fields. Okay, so this is the message that we're going to show him. Okay, but what if he did it correctly? What if from the start he entered, like, I don't care about the values, if it was matching here and there, or if it was matching here and there. The bottom line is he has entered something, anything. So it's not empty. So this puts us in this then, or in the first if. So if this condition is true, if all of this is true, we're going to add the second layer of checking, which is another if saying the following. Okay, fields are not empty. Let's now check the equality between the user and the confirm user. And let's check the equality between the password and confirm password. And say something like, we will need an AND, and we will need an equality check for the first condition and equality check for the second condition. We will say if the confirm user text equaled whatever the user will enter in the user text box, and if the password text, if the user entered a text in the password text field which was equal to whatever the user will enter in the text field of the confirm password text box, if these two were correct, if these two conditions were true, then we should log in this guy, like he entered everything correctly, or I'm sorry, we should register him, like he has entered the username and confirm username, these values were identical, and he entered a password and confirm password, and these values are identical. So we are going to register him. If you remember when I was talking about the database in the session, I told you that the database is basically a table, okay? A table which has columns. These columns corresponds to variables or tags, right? So here, if these values for the user and confirm user are identical, we just, if they are the same, then I care about fetching one of them, only one of them, okay? Because they are the same, and the same thing goes for the password and confirm password. So by the end of the day, the only two pieces of data that I need for each user is his username and his password. So in the database, I should have like a table, and this table has two columns. The head of the first column is called user, for example, and the head of the second column is called password, okay? So when the user tries to register something like this, and he enters a user, his confirm user value are the same, and he enters a password, and his confirm password value are the same as the password, then we will take one of those, like one of this user and confirm user, and store it under the column of the user, okay? And in the same row, in this column or in this table, we're going to take one of these values, which is password or confirm password, and store it in this column that is named password, okay? So basically for each user we will have a row, and each row represents an entity or an account or one user, okay? I hope this is clear. All right, so as I've told you, this algorithm or this technique in logging in depends on having only one user in this system. So whenever you click you register and you close the application and open it again, it's the same user that's going to log in. It's not, you're not able to create another account if you are logged in, or you'll not be able to create another account if you have already registered, because if you have already registered, as we will see soon, you will always be transferred to the login page. So you wouldn't have this ability to create another or register another account, because you will always be transferred to the login page, okay? If you want to know how to make multiple users, you will find the link after the first 3 videos, okay? And I really recommend that, like, I wouldn't say that I will recommend you to not to watch it, but it may waste so much of your time, because I told you that this is not mandatory, this is totally optional, so you can skip this multiple logins. Anyways, if the user have entered a user that is equivalent to the confirm user value, and if he entered a value in the password text box that is equivalent to the confirm user value, we are going to take one value of these two and one value of these two and store it in the database. So let's go to the TinyDB and check this, or take this store value method, and we will add basically 2, okay? You will see this tag here. This tag actually corresponds to the variable name or the column name. So under the variable name or the column name, user in all caps, just to differentiate between this small user keyword that we are using in the GUI, and shortly we will make a variable called username. We will just want to differentiate the variables, okay? So when you see user in all caps, know that this variable is in the database. This is a column name in the database, okay? So under the column named user, or under the variable or tag names user, I'm going to store whichever value of these two, user or confirm user. So I'm going to take this guy here and store the value of it inside the variable called user, okay? what I'm storing, actually, I'm storing the text that the user will enter inside this user input, meaning that whatever the user will input here or there. Okay. All right. The same thing will go to the password. I'm going to make a variable called pass in all caps, and I'm going to store whatever the user will enter in this field or in this field. Why one of them? Because they are identical. Okay. All right. So we store his values, and he's trying to log in. Remember, he's trying to sign up or register. So if we store his values in the database in an entry in one row under two columns, which is user and pass columns, then the guy has registered successfully. He has signed up. So if his registration or his information storage has done, let's send him to the login page so he can actually try the values that he has just registered with and try to log in with, right? So we will send him to the login page using this open another screen. Okay, we are going to send him to the login page, which is called screen 1. All right, and we can add actually an else here. What if he entered some values that are not matching? Like he has entered, for example, Ahmed in the user text box, and in the confirm user text box he has entered Ahmed with an A, for example, or Ahmed in all caps, and this was in lowercase. Yeah. So if one of the credentials are not matching either in this condition or in this condition, we're going to tell him a notification saying unmatched credentials. Okay. All right. So basically, so let's go to the screen 1 or the login page. I'm going to delete these guys. All right. And let's say if the user entered button 1, which is basically the login, which is the login button, we want to say something will happen. First of all, if he tried to log in without, if he pressed login without actually entering anything, like these values, these text in the text boxes are values, are empty, like he have left the field blank and he tried to press the login button. So we need to make the not empty check one more time over these, like just how we did it in the register. We checked first that he has entered something, like anything. We will do the same thing in the login page or the screen page. So we will say if the okay, this is the text box 1. If this was not empty, which is the text of the text box 1, and if this, the text from the password text 1 also was not empty, meaning that he has entered something. I don't care at this point if whatever he has entered was correct or not. The thing is that I'm not sure that he wasn't messing around and leaving the blank, the fields blank, and just pressing login for whatever the reason is. Okay, so basically this is to ensure that he has entered something in these fields. So if he has entered something in these fields, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to add an if statement to check. Okay, the fields are not blank. So how about I compare whatever he has entered in the text box 1, which is the username, with whatever value that we have, that we will fetch from the database. So let's just recap or reiterate the idea here. The user will enter something in the text box, which is the text box 1. Okay, so this will retrieve whatever the user will enter in the text box 1. Okay, and we will retrieve whatever the user will enter as text in password text box 1. So the thing is, if the text that the user will enter in the username or the text box 1 was equal to whatever value that is under the column named user in the database, then we will log in this guy. Okay, so let's try this. I'm saying that whatever the user will enter of text in the text box 1, we will need the database component here, because we want to fetch or retrieve the information that the user have stored when he was registering. So I'm going to add the tinydb in the login page as well. Okay, so I'm going to say get value. All right, I'm going to say if the text that the user will enter inside the text box 1 was equaling to whatever value that he has registered with and got stored in the variable or column named user, then we will log in this guy. But remember, there's an and here because we have a password too, right? So this is going to be the first part, and this is going to be the second part. All right, so instead of this text box, we are looking for the password text box, okay, and the text of it. Okay, so if and continuing the condition, and if the text that the user will enter in this password text box was equaling to whatever the value that we will retrieve from inside the variable pass, which is existent in the database, then we will log in this guy. Okay, just one more time to reiterate. If the value that the user will enter in the username text box was equaling the value that we will get from the database under the column user, then this means that the user have already registered and he is entering the correct parameters. Okay, and in the same time, if the value that the user will enter in the password text field, if it was equal to whatever value has been stored in the registration process inside the variable called pass in the database, then he is entering the correct parameters. So if these two credentials were matching whatever values has been stored, or whatever values have been stored in the database, then why not log in this guy, right? So if this is the case, we will log in this dude to our home page or feed page. Okay, so we will transfer him to this page called home. All right, okay, all right. Now let's see the else of the first if. What I mean by this, we said that if the values in the text box 1 and text box 2 were not empty, meaning that the user has entered something, we would jump to the nested if, the next level of check, which is now check if the value that he entered has actually is there in the database. If it's there in the database, this means that he has registered with it. Okay, and if the value that he entered in the password text box is there in the database, that's why we are getting the value from the database to compare with whatever he has entered in the text field. If this was there, and if the user value that he entered was there in the database, then log in the guy and send him to the home screen. Okay, but let's return to the first if. Let's say else. Else is the reverse of this if. So we're saying if not empty. So this means else is if one of those are empty, like if one of the fields, or maybe two of them, if both of them were empty, then we're gonna give him some notification like this using the notifier, which we haven't added yet. Okay, so we want to add the notifier from the user interface. That's the notifier here. Okay, so we will go to the notifier and say maybe you would want a notice message or alert, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna use the alert for simplicity, and I'm just going to say one of these fields, or maybe one of them, or maybe both of them. So I'm just going to say these fields should not be empty. Okay, all right. And the second if, now we are checking if the credentials he's entering is in the database or not. Maybe he entered something wrongfully, like instead of entering Ahmed with an E, he entered Ahmed with an A. So we are going to tell him that username or password are incorrect. Okay. Alright, if things goes like smooth and he entered what he exactly registered with, he will be transferred to the screen, or the third screen, which is the home screen. Okay, so cool. Now let's go to the third one, which is the home screen, and just make sure that if the user tried to press the back button, remember this is an Android system, so if he tried to press the back button, we are going to close the application. Okay, and if he tried to log out, I'm going to send him to the first screen, which is the login screen, screen 1. Alright, and if he tried to clear all data in the database, which is what I mean by all data is his account, because remember this system is based on having only one user per usage. So if he wants to delete his own account, he'll delete everything from the database, meaning he's going to delete the only one row that corresponds to his data, that contains his user and his pass. Okay, so to control the database, we will need to add the storage, the tiny database component to this screen as well. Maybe you would want the notifier, so just in case I'm going to add it. Okay, so when he click on this clear all or delete my account button, we are going to clear all the data in the database. Okay, and after this is done, we're gonna send him to, remember, if we cleared all the data in the database, what is the point of me sending him to the login page? He can't log in. He first of all needs to register first. So I'm going to send him to the registration button to register again. Okay, and I believe this is all about the home screen. Okay, but there's something in the first screen, which is the login screen, and let's discuss this just briefly. We want to say when the screen initializes, when this screen like pops in, whenever you open the login screen, what I want to do is I want to check if the user have registered or not. Like, let's say that the user is opening the application for the first time. Remember, your first screen is by default the first screen that's going to be displayed whenever you open an application. Okay, so I don't want the first screen to be displayed if the user didn't have any values in the database, meaning that the user haven't registered anything in the database. Alright, so to make sure that the user haven't registered or have registered, what I'm going to do when the screen 1 or the login page initializes is to fetch every data regarding the user or the password from the database. That's why I'm going to make a variable called user. I'm just going to call it user from database, just for you to know that I'm fetching whatever value from the user column in the database and placing it inside this user from database variable. Okay, and I'm going to set it to empty string. Alright, I'm going to say here the second one is going to be pass from database. I'm going to store in it whatever value inside the variable called pass or the column called pass in the database. I'm going to store it in this guy. Alright, so he can start off now. We will use this tinydb to get the value. Alright, and we will set this variable we have just created, which is user from database, and we will set this variable which is called password from database. First of all, let's set the user from database with whatever value the user have registered with and got stored in the variable user in all caps. Okay, so let's set whatever value we find. You're trying to get the value under this column, and we are going to store it in the variable called user from database. So if we fetch these data or retrieve these data from the database, which is whatever value inside this column, and we store it in this variable user from database, and whatever value inside this column, which is called pass, inside this variable called pass from database, if these variables, when we are fetching from the database, if they got values from the database, if they are not empty, okay, then this means that our dude here has already registered. This is not his first time in the application. He has been here before and he has already registered. That's why when we tried fetching his data from user and pass columns from the database, and we saved them in these variables, those variables actually weren't empty, and this means that he has already registered. So if the application is initializing and he has already registered, then I'll simply send him to the login page, okay, which is basically the same screen that I'm in. All right, so I'm just gonna guarantee that he is in the first screen. Screen 1. Else, if these were not empty, okay, if both, else if these both were empty, okay, because this is the if statement, if both were not empty, this means that we found something in the database. This means that this guy has already registered, so just transfer him to the first screen, which is the login screen. If these values or variables were empty, this means that we didn't find anything under the tag user or pass, so we returned you with this empty string. If they were empty, then we will send him to the registration page. So whenever he opens the application for the first time, he will be sent to the registration page. Okay? Alright. Now let's try this. I'll have my Nox player ready. Alright, I'm going to open MIT AppInventor. Let's enter this EVOXIU and try to connect. Alright, notice something. The application when it started, it knows that I haven't registered yet, right? This was the initialization in the first screen, okay? Because I never registered with any values before, I don't have anything in the database, it has immediately transferred me to the register panel, right? Just to make sure that this is what's going on, if I try to manually go to the first screen, which is the login page, it's gonna go to the register page again because I haven't registered. Okay, this is what the initialization is saying in the first screen. If the application is initializing and he found nothing in the user here, in the user or the password columns in the database, it's immediately going to transfer me to the register page. That's why it keeps on forwarding me to the register screen. So let's enter something like Ahmed, and Ahmed with an extra D at the end, and let's type in a password like 1 and 2, try to register. It's gonna tell you unmatched credentials, so let's do this correctly and try to register. If you registered, it's going to take you to the first screen. Why? Because if you look at the registration page, you will see here that whenever we register our data correctly, it's going to this is the second if. It's going to store these data was the data that I have just entered, Ahmed and 1, 2, this will be stored in a variable called user in the database and in a variable or column called pass in the database, and I will be transferred to the first screen, which is the login screen. So now let's go to the login screen and try to enter Ahmed and 1 2. Okay, if I press login, I'm going to go to this home of mine, right? So if I press logout, I'm going to go to the first screen. Okay, now I'm going to close the application, right? And I'm going to make a new session. I just want you to see something. Remember, I have already registered, okay? I have made an account, I have values, I have data in the database. So I'm trying to open the application one more time. This is the second time that I open this application. So what do you think? Will I be in the first screen, that is the login screen, or will I be introduced or stuck with the registration page? See, I have been transferred to the login page because if you looked here at the initialization, this is the point of retrieving the data when the application is initializing. We retrieved whatever values that I've entered the user, which was Ahmed, and the password, which was 1 2. So this if saying if these variables, which corresponds to the values under the variable called user from the database, and this corresponds to the value under the variable called pass in the database, if these variables were not empty, this means that this user has already been registered. So if this is the case, like, take this guy to the first screen, let him log in. If this was not the case, which was the first attempt of opening this application, my first time in this application, that's why I've been introduced to the first to the registration panel or registration screen. So these are the placeholders that I told you about, the hints, okay? That you, whenever you write something, they just disappear like this. So let's try entering faulty credentials like 1 3 instead of 1 2. It's gonna tell you username or password are not correct. This means that you have an account, you have data in the database, but you are just missing something, you are forgetting some stuff. You are trying to type wrong parameters, okay? So if we entered the correct parameters, this time we will have our home screen. If I wanted to delete my account, notice that I wasn't transferred to the first screen, which is the login screen. Once I delete my account, I'm going to be transferred to the registration screen, because remember, the first screen is always trying to initialize, it's always trying to start, but the problem is if it's starting and you don't have anything in the database, you will be immediately shifted or transferred to the registration panel. Okay, now let's try to leave these blocks empty, which is the first if right there. Okay, just try to leave these fields empty and try to register. It's gonna tell you one of these fields are empty. Let's try to fill one of these fields, and like, well, this is 1 5, and I'm going to leave this empty. It's gonna tell you one of these fields are empty. Okay, so this is how the else here works. Okay, this is 1 5, and now I'm registered. All right, now I'm returned to this login page. Now let's see how can we make this remember me thing. Well, remember something, this remember me is in the login page. Okay, so basically we want to say when the user is trying to log in, okay, and this if, nested if, the second if, when the user is trying to log in, we are comparing the values that he is going to enter in this box, which is this guy here, with whatever value from the database under the user column, and the same thing goes for the password. Okay, so if he entered his data correctly, before I transfer him to his home screen, I'm just going to make an extra check, an extra level of check, and I'm going to say if the checkbox was this choose list checked, if the checkbox was checked, meaning it was true, then we are going to store a value in the database. Store value, and let's store this value under a column called checked status. Okay, so we will say if checked status was true, then this means that this guy have, he have ticked the checkbox. He have just made something like this. Okay, if he checked this checkbox, then under the column called checked status in the database, we will set a value of true. All right. Else, if he didn't, if this was false, then inside this column in the database, we will save it as false. And this is going to be the default. Maybe he doesn't want to remember. He doesn't want the application to remember him, right? Then we will take him to this home screen. Okay? So when the screen initializes, we wouldn't only be concerned in having his data fetched from the database under his user column and saving it in this user, and the same thing goes for his password. We will do the same thing for his check status. So we were going to make another variable called check status from oh my goodness. Oh my god, this new keyboard is really annoying. I'm really sorry, guys. Check status from DB. Okay, and we are going to set it by default to false, like saying that it's just an initial value that's gonna change. Okay, so don't worry about it. All right. So if we found something for this guy in the database, which this if actually stands for, if the variable user and the variable pass from database were not empty, then this means that we have found something for him in the database when we were trying to fetch the values under these columns, right? All right, so with the same fashion that we are fetching data from under the user column and saving it in the user from database, and fetching data from the password column and saving it under the pass from database, we are going to fetch data from the checked status and save it in this variable called check status from the database. And if we didn't find any tag or variable or column named check status, this means that the user, whenever he was logging in, he never actually clicked on this button. He didn't want the application to remember him. So if we didn't any values under this column or under this tag, we will by default put this value as false. Okay, so we will add another if nested inside this if. If we found data in this variable user and in this variable pass, meaning that these variables were not empty, before we transfer the guy to the first screen, which is the current screen, the login screen, we will add another thing. Let's say that if the variable called checked status was equal to whatever, or not whatever, if the variable we got from the database was equal to true, this means that this guy, whenever he clicked on this button and checked this box and clicked login, this means that he has enabled the checkbox, right? And at this case, the first if here will be saved. We will store this check status as true. Okay, so if he did this segment right here, which is the first if, meaning that he clicked on that and then clicked login, then this means that the check status is saved as true. Then we are going to fetch it and save it in this check status from DB. So if we are trying to get this variable, which is checked status from DB, and we found that it was true, then this means that the dude or the user here, he actually clicked on the checked status or the checkbox. Yeah. So if this was true, then I will simply say that I want you to pre-populate the first text box with his user. Okay. And I want you to pre-populate his password. Okay, with the password database, and I want you to pre-populate the checkbox as enabled. All right, and we will take him to this first screen. Okay, what if it was an else? Yani the user didn't check on the checkbox here. He didn't even click on the remember me checkbox, which is the else condition or the else case. If this was the case, then I'll just transfer him to the same screen. That's it. I'm going to transfer him to the login screen. All right. We'll place this guy here. Okay. That's really unnecessary, but because in any case he will be in his first screen, he will be in the login screen. If we found, if this if was true, meaning that he has some credentials saved in the database, then by default he is going to be in his first screen or the login screen. But just to make sure, okay? So if we found that the checked status from the database was true, then we are going to pre-populate his user from the database and pre-populate his password from the database and just make this remember me as checked. Just remind him that he asked for it. He asked this remember me box to be checked. Okay? Else, if he didn't want us to remember him, then we will just normally like bring him to the login screen without pre-populating any data. Okay? So now let's try to say Ahmed and 1.5. This is normally is going to enter you to the, you know, his home screen, all right, or your home screen. Now log out and say Ahmed 1.5 and click on remember me. Click login. You will be in this home screen. Whenever you log out, you will find that your credentials are populated here. Okay. Alright, so now we finished the login system and the sign up system with the remember me functionality. Just the thing left is maybe I want, when I'm entering something, what if the credentials that I've entered were not actually identical? Like, what if I want something to appear here, like invalid input, for example, written in red? Or what if I want to be, what if I wanted to, whenever I'm entering my credentials, even if I enter it correctly, I don't want to be transferred to this home screen immediately. I just want to see something like a small message here saying welcome, and this welcome message will be there for like 2 seconds or 3 seconds before I get transferred to my, you know, my home screen. So in this case, I'm going to use, or I'm going to need the timer that I've talked to you about. Okay, so this timer you will find it in sensors. Just drag and drop this clock. The clock by default has an interval of 1000 milliseconds, which stands for 1 second actually. So just remember something, this timer or this interval may not be actually, you know, correct. Like 1 second would be something less than this. Even if you make it like 3 seconds like this, you wouldn't actually feel as if it's 3 seconds running in the background. So I'm going to make it something like 8 seconds, and let's see how this goes. All right. Remember, this value isn't like it's really not that precise. It's really not that accurate. Okay. So maybe it's gonna be less than this. So let's just make it 8 seconds for now, And for starters, whenever the application starts, I really don't want the timer to be enabled. I will enable this manually in the background. Okay, and I'm going to add a label here. Before the label, I'm going to use a horizontal arrangement in the middle, and I'm going to insert this label inside. This label wouldn't have any text in it. It's going to be empty, and the font is going to be bold and it's going to be italic. Let's give it something like, we will control the rest in the code. Okay, so let's go to the box. Let's say that in the second if here, if the user is trying to input some values and we are trying to check if these values are the same as the values that he has registered with in the database, we said that if he, like, by mistake entered some wrong parameters, we are going to notify him saying that username or password are incorrect. This is cool, but I want to, like, use this label that I've inserted. Just remember, this label is called label 1. Okay, we're gonna change it right now. Okay, so before we notify him, I'm going to change or set the value of label 1, okay, to be invalid input. Okay, then I'm going to set the color of the text. You have the colors here. I'm going to stick to something known here. I'm not going to make any RGBs. So I'm going to take one of these colors. I'm going to take the red one and place it here. Just as a side note, so before taking me to this home screen, I'm going to change all of these guys. Let's place this here. Before taking me to the home screen, I'm going to say something like welcome. Alright. Going to take the color is going to be something bluish, and the font size is going to be, let's make it 18 as well. Okay. Now let's end the session and try a new one. Add AppInventor. Alright, since we have clicked remember me the last time, we are seeing our data getting pre-populated, and this is good, you know. If we try to enter some data that is wrongful, which is faulty, it's not there in the database, and try to do a login, it's going to tell you invalid input, okay? But if we try to enter the actual correct data, this welcome message is going to be there for a moment, then you'll be transferred to the home screen. Okay, let's try it one more time. 1.5, and let's just click remember me. I don't know if it was it 1.2. Yeah, it's 1.1. It was 1.2. You see this welcome phrase? It just appears for maybe 1 second or 2 seconds. And this is really slow. I want this to be there for like more couple of seconds. So I'm going to take this clock. Alright, and let's say whenever the welcome phrase is written after this, I'm going to set this clock as enabled. I'm going to set it as true. Remember, by default it's not set to anything. Come on, by default the clock does not fire or is not enabled. Okay, so we're going to set it to enabled, we're going to fire it, then it's going to be fired for like maybe 8 seconds or less. I don't think that this number is accurate, but whenever it finishes this timing interval or time interval, we are going to set it to false. So we are doing all of this before jumping to the home screen. Okay, now let's try this. Okay, so I believe this made it like stay for a couple of seconds, and this is what we want. All right. Hey guys, this is just a quick update. If you noticed in this code that we written for the screen one, which is the login page, I was setting the checkbox enabled to the value true, which is, it was not supposed to be enabled. I couldn't notice this up until now. It's supposed to be checked. Okay, so if you have it checked, let's try and run this. If the application is still running, try to make it Ahmed 12, remember me. Log out, and you will see the remember beam button checked. This is what this means, right? It was enabled, it's supposed to be checked. Okay.